All right, I think officially we're going to call this episode 1 of Section 1904. An announcement made Wednesday morning, March 26th, by our man, Johnny G, opening day -1, that we were launching this new venture. I got to say, it is about 10 o'clock in the morning, somewhere just past 10 o'clock on Wednesday. John dropped an announcement out there, and my inbox has been filled with people signing up and subscribing to this idea, to this seedling that we have in the ground for Section 1904. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's already responded. It's been great. It is made my heart pitter-patter just a little bit here this morning. Even though I'm out of coffee at my house, this is a shout-out. The bat signal is up for Will Holder. It has gotten my blood flowing in a way that hasn't flowed in a while. So I just want to start by saying thank you on that. But this is episode 1. Officially, it's a Wednesday. We're underway. We're here to talk a little bit about the Padres. We're here to talk a little bit about everything. John, you did a great job putting that whisper out into the wind, and that's really what it was. It was sort of like whispering into the wind that we have this idea for what it is that we want to do, what it is that we want to create. And if the first couple of hours of this are any indication of what's to come, I don't mind telling you, I'm pretty over the moon excited about the possibilities of what Section 1904 is going to become. I don't know if that's your reaction to this, but just out of the gate, I just want to say, wow, I'm floored. Yeah.
So, we recorded last night for a number of different reasons. You had life stuff going on. I had schedule stuff going on with my family. And part of the reason why I'm more excited for this recording than that one is because there's no one home right now. I'm full of energy. And yes, all of those emails are like a rocket has been placed up my ass. I'm shooting to the moon, Darren. I'm so fucking excited. I'm so amped. You and I, we will fully admit, we're not the best at selling ourselves. We'd much rather just talk about sports or whatever we are passionate about. And so I went back and I listened to, what we recorded last night, what we released this morning. And I was like, it feels like we didn't sound as excited as we were. And today we sound excited as we are, because now it's like, it's real. We're not looking at our notes. We're seeing the emails flying in. We're seeing the support. It's real. But in the category of day one, we're doing some of this stuff for the first time. I wrote that post. I think it was titled "Why We Are Launching a Media Company" on section1904.com. But then when I wrote it first person. There's a lot of I. Not written. At first I had it where we were both going to be authors on the post, and I was like, should I put words in Darren's mouth? I probably shouldn't. There's a shot in there about radio companies, and I don't think you want to be taking shots at radio companies, so I'll write it myself. And as soon as it goes up, I got my wife goes, "Is Darren going to be mad that the title of it says Why We Launch, but everything in the post is I?" And I was like, I don't know. We're going to figure all this stuff out. It's day one. We don't know what we're doing. We're just excited, and we're going in the direction of success, I hope.
Yeah, I would think so. And I would tell you, as exciting as it is, it's new, it's exciting, it's a bit terrifying. I said to John before we started recording this episode, I said, I immediately feel a sense of responsibility. Yeah. That people have taken the time to subscribe, right? Not even to say that I would like to be a paid subscriber for this podcast somewhere down the road. Whenever it is that we open that up officially, we don't have an exact date on that. I think, the way that we're working it now is it's sort of like a 30-day free trial kind of situation. And there's some reasons for that we can discuss somewhere on down the road. But ultimately, it's for us to establish a little bit of a rhythm, and for us to prove to people who want to interact with this project that we're here to do it. And we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to keep feeding you this kind of content, and we're going to create this great community that we've called Section 1904. So, there's a lot that we have to prove. Yeah. And immediately, as I've said, when you and I recorded this last night, it's like, yeah, okay, cool. We have this idea, and I'm going to do a podcast, and I'm going to get some reps. And John's always had his idea much more on the business side. I'm just a guy that wants to show up and talk into a microphone. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I really want to do. I don't know if that's really what you want to do long term, John. If you want to be a a podcast host for the rest of your life, if you're more interested in writing or on the business side or starting a media company. But I'm pretty basic in, how it is that I'm defined. And that's, I want to be a host. I want to entertain. I want to be on the mic. So, from that standpoint, seeing just where this has gone in a couple of hours is pretty exciting to me. And I do feel like we need to address a couple of things because already I've had some people asking me some questions about the platform that we're choosing to launch this on. And these are good questions. And these are questions, frankly, that I have. Yeah. I've never heard of Ghost before John introduced it to me. Over the last couple of months since I left iHeart, I've thought about Substack. I've thought about YouTube. I've thought about Patreon. I've thought about a lot of different platforms. I will leave this to you because I do trust you. I think that you are somebody who invests a lot of time and energy into this sort of stuff. Where, as I said, I'm kind of basic. I'm basic talent. I show up, put a microphone in front of me, and point a finger. You go talk for 15 minutes. What do you got? Let's talk a little bit about why this platform. What is it that we like about it? And for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, John, what do they need to know?
Okay, so we are publishing technically on two separate platforms. When I push out a podcast episode, it's on a podcast host called Captivate. We are with Captivate for a very specific reason, which is they allow for private RSS feeds. So if you are a paid subscriber to Section 1904, you will have access to your own unique paid private RSS feed. So you can get full episodes when we push them out. There will also be a public feed that will be free if you've subscribed to Section 1904 or were previously subscribed to Bandwagon Beach. You'll get that one. Eventually, that'll shoot out like partial episodes with a call to action to sign up for the paid subscription to get the full episodes on the private feed. But if you subscribe on section1904.com, that is a platform called Ghost. And every time we publish on section1904.com, you will get an email. If it's a new podcast episode, if it's a new blog post, if it's a video, if it's an announcement, whatever it is, it's going to come into your email because you've signed up there on Ghost. Ghost is a Substack competitor. We were previously on Substack with Bandwagon Beach. There's a lot of people on Substack. We considered just launching this on Substack for a long time. There was two main reasons we decided against that. One, Substack is having some blowback, I guess would be the way to put it, in terms of who they're allowing to publish and what those people are publishing on their platform. I won't get into all of those specifics. You can Google it if you want to. And two, Ghost doesn't really take a percentage of what we're making here, right? Like when I was doing Padres Hot Tub with Craig Elston and we were on Patreon, Patreon was taking a percentage of what we were making. Substack wants to take a percentage of what you're making. And we want those fan dollars to come directly to supporting the show. So we basically bought our way into Ghost. That website is bought and paid for. Ghost does not get a percentage of anything. Every dollar that a subscriber sends to Section 1904 ends up here with me and Darren to pay for expenses and hopefully eventually our lives. But we decided to go with Ghost to avoid some of the blowback that even we were seeing from people who were like, oh, you're still on Substack? Haven't you read that story about whatever? And also because we just don't want fan dollars going into the pockets of, as you said when we recorded last night, into the pockets of large corporations that aren't in San Diego, have no interest in San Diego, and don't care what we're doing. We want this to be a fan-supported platform, and we want the community to include them and us, and hopefully no one else.
Yeah, and when it comes to, to trying to figure out, because it's still an awkward thing for me as somebody who's done radio forever, as somebody who's done, a ton of talk radio forever. It's mostly free, right? Like, what do you need to access my content for the last 20 plus years? You need a terrestrial radio. Yeah. You need an AM frequency, right? You need podcast or access to an app or something.
Yeah.
But, I do think that this is, even the whole concept of, John and I spent a lot of time talking about, what it is that we want to be, the mechanism for this, whether it is subscriber-based, subscriber supported, fan supported, or whether it is advertiser based. And, the one thing I don't want to do is come out here and like shit on a bunch of other people, and I said that in our launch, that this isn't for me saying like, oh, okay, radio's dead. I hope people that are working in radio are happy and successful and can do it for as long as possible. So I do hope that for them. I have friends who work in radio and I don't wish them any ill will. So I do want to make that point clear. But, the other thing I would say is I think this is more about, this is why this will work for us. This is why this will work for us. And we also are going to reserve the right to pivot. I've had a lot of people suggest to me YouTube, like, hey, how come you're not on YouTube? You should be on YouTube. Haven't you heard the successful story of this person, that person on YouTube? And I've been approached by people to go ahead and do that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that we'll never do that. Right. I don't know that we never would do that or that I would never do that. I just don't know that I'm as convinced today that you need to see this, that there's anything worth watching on this. I think
because right now this looks like
listening to. I don't know that it's worth watching. I got to be honest. As we're sitting here, I'm unshowered. I'm wearing a backwards baseball cap. John's unshowered. He just got home from walking his dog. I just don't know what the value is in seeing this. And I understand that there's great appeal to it. And YouTube, more people are on YouTube than are on linear television. I get it. We've looked into all of this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate that people are having great success on YouTube and maybe there's a place for it somewhere down the road. But it would be easier for us to make this available visually down the road than it would be to start visually and then do it the opposite, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like we're leaving ourselves some opportunity here to make some changes, to do some things here if there's some sort of demand for it. I just, as I said in the teaser for this project, I don't sit around and watch a lot of YouTube shows. And they're popular. People are making money, John, doing this sort of stuff. It's not me knocking it. It's not me saying, well, it's, the advertising is interfering. Like, yes, I think that's a real thing. It's just that like I find myself gravitating towards this kind of concept because I just think it's more suitable for me, for what I want to do, for what you want to do. So, again, we'll see what the future holds. But for anybody who's asking, it's something we discussed and these are things that we've considered and we'll keep an open mind about what it looks like moving forward.
Yeah, that's the main thing is we're not really saying no to anything. We're saying this is where we want to start. This is our foundation. We'll grow from here and we'll make some decisions and we might change our minds at some point. But for right now, we know what the foundation's going to be, which is every day we're going to get on and we're going to do a show. And until we change our minds, it's going to be an audio show and it's going to be San Diego sports focused. And that's a good place to start. And that's all we're really coming out of the gate promising.
Mm-hmm. Other questions I'm sure that are being asked, and especially given my history in town, is well, what about working with this person or that person? Obviously, having a long professional, personal dynamic with Marty all throughout the years. Again, nothing is ruled out. I feel like John, you and I wouldn't have gotten in this if we have completely said, shut the door on any other concept. One of the really great things about the last 8 months, I guess it's been now, as I've been approached with other people for ideas. And, I think it's very flattering. One of the things that you worry about when you're in my position, when you've done this for 20 years, is that like, you're just done. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're just done. Like you don't have anything left. And, like you've lost your fastball. You're not really sure. Like, is anybody, even though, it wasn't performance, that wasn't what was going on there at iHeart. You do. Like we all have these insecurities. Any of us do. And, I don't want this to be perceived as some sort of final act of my career. Like if anything, I feel like this is, I've got an energy and a renewed energy to this that I'm really excited about. But, I appreciate people that have approached with different ideas. And I know I'm not the only person in this conversation that has had that. I know you've been approached by other people as well.
Yeah.
And all I would say is like, it's flattering. I really wasn't interested in working for somebody. I think I've been approached by people who were trying to create and and say, well, I have an opportunity for you. And I was like, yeah, that's not really what I'm going for here. What I'm going for is something that I'm not punching a clock. I'm not showing up to work. I want to build something. I want to create something here that I think will be useful and enjoyable and interesting for people who are in San Diego, sports fans and fans and San Diegans alike. And, again, we'll see. I think somewhere down the road, we get this up and running, have a little bit of success. These are people that I think are very talented. These are people who I'm sure some of you are going through names in your head of people who are, unemployed or employed or otherwise. There's a lot of smart people out there and talented people out there, John, who want to do stuff like this. And I do think that there's great opportunity for us, not only to work in competition with them, but also to work in collaboration with them. So I think that's really important for us to talk about and to acknowledge before we get rolling is, that there's going to be written and video and spoken word and a lot of stuff. So, we have some big ideas, but the most important thing for us is just to get this off the ground, get it going, get people engaged with it, and we'll see where it takes us. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, exactly. We're the first two members of what I imagine will be a team eventually. But yeah, an important thing for me that it sounds like it's important for you too. But the last two jobs I've had, I worked for Vox Media, building out the podcast network. I mean, I started and built out the podcast network for SB Nation. And I remember sitting there one day and telling my wife, like, I think I'm going to spend the rest of my career at this company doing this because I love this job and I love these people and blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, there's a restructuring, new management comes in, and within a couple months, I'm miserable and everything about the job sucks and everything I liked about it was gone. And I leave there and I end up at Yahoo Sports, and for 2 years, I love it. And I'm telling my wife, hey, a lot of people have been here for 20 years at Yahoo. I see why. The benefits are great. The people are great. The product is great. And I was like, I'm going to be here for as long as they'll let me stay. And then they bring in a new CEO and he brings in a new head of whatever, and it's a restructuring. And all of a sudden my job is made completely different. And I'm like, this is hell. I hate this. I want to get out of here. And so as I've had opportunities and employment offers in the last few months, I've thought to myself, like, do I want to get back in that situation where even if I'm happy, it just takes like one day, one decision by management, and all of a sudden my entire life is turned upside down? Or do I want to try and build something that can be sustainable where that's not going to happen? Like, that's the dream is working for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here. But to bring it full circle to a thing you said at the beginning, it's even better than that. Because it's not really working for yourself, it's working for the fans that support us. And that is so much more rewarding than just, I have to do the thing my boss says I have to do because my boss says it. Like, if the fans are crying out for something, then it's like, well, I have to do it because these are our fans and they support us, so we need to support them and supply them with what they're asking for. That's so much more encouraging and what's the opposite of soul sucking, fulfilling than the other situation.
Right. And for this to grow, it probably has to grow beyond John and myself.
Yeah.
And that's just the fact of it, right? We said yesterday, we're not doing this as an aside. We're not doing this as hobbyists. We're doing this because we really think that there's an opportunity to do something truly special and unique in San Diego. And I think that would include some really, really smart and talented people who we've both spoken to. When you said that you were starting a media company back on Bandwagon Beach a few episodes back, that got reaction. That got people's attention around town. And I'm not going to go into detail on that sort of stuff because it's not fair. But I will just tell you that we get this right. And I think a lot of people, most importantly, the people who are consumers of it, are going to be happy with where it's headed. So this is us just getting it going, just getting it off the ground, and we'll see where it takes us. So people can subscribe. People, please do subscribe. Give it a shot. We're going to pick up the frequency. I have it in my iCalendar. John sent me a calendar invite. I live by the calendar invite because I'm married to somebody who is addicted to the calendar invite. So I saw that every day we're going to record this. Our goal is to put out episodes every day. we'll see. I mean, that's the goal. Doesn't sound like
goal.
much. And sometimes there are other things happening in life, but I think that's something that we're going to strive for here. And again, I think it also speaks to where this is headed, that I don't know that the two of us can do 5 episodes a week for the rest of our lives. So, we're going to have other people that are going to jump into the mix on this and talk to us and hang out with us and have fun with us. And those are going to be sports people. And those are going to be just interesting people and figures and names and people that you might know, people that you would want to know, people around San Diego. So, we're gonna have a lot of that going on here as well. And it's a great time to do it because, as I mentioned, it's opening day -1.
Yeah.
Opening day is Thursday at 1:00.
Yep.
It is Chris Sale. It is Michael King. It is the Padres. It is the Braves. We're going to be hanging out pregame in Barrio Logan at Mason. So, it's a great time to get it going. We're 5 matches in the SDFC. San Diego Wave just kicked off. It's a great summer ahead, not just for sports, but for lifestyle. So, there's plenty for us to discuss and dive into each and every day. It's going to be really easy to put shows out every day that are going to be fun and engaging and interesting and smart and educational.
It's going to be the summer of Section 1904. Declaring
Nice.
it right now. This brings me to a point that I'm curious about. We were texting earlier today, and you said that you might have an opportunity to attend the opening day game tomorrow. So now I'm curious because when we have met previously at Mason Aleworks in Barrio Logan, I think there maybe was one time when you rode your e-bike, but otherwise did the car. I'm curious how you're planning that out. Are you going to take the e-bike to Barrio Logan and trolley down to Petco Park? Are you going to do the car the whole way? Like what's your plan for A, getting to Mason for some pregame beers and tacos, and B, getting to Petco Park from there?
This will 100% be a trolley situation.
Yeah.
That I will park my vehicle at the Palm Avenue trolley station, and I have my Pronto app, John. I'm sure you have the Pronto app loaded on your phone as well. Do you really?
I do, yeah.
You do?
I don't know why. I had to put it on like 6 months ago, and then it has just stayed on there. Did you see that the trolley A is ramping up the frequency of trolleys for pre and post game for Padre games this year, and B, that they have, I think, 5 trolleys wrapped in like different Padres players?
I did not see that.
Okay. The reason I was paying attention to that is A, good on them for upping the amount of trolleys for pre and post game. That's awesome. But B, I saw a promotional picture that the Padres had put out, I think just for the start of the season, and Dylan Cease wasn't on it. And I saw someone on Blue Sky going like, do you think Dylan Cease opts out of this? Or do you think that they told him, like, we don't need you for this? And then I saw that they're wrapping, I think it's 5 trolleys, or at least 5 different players that they're wrapping on trolleys. And again, no Dylan Cease. I think the only pitcher was Yu Darvish. It was like Machado, Tatis, Merrill, Bogarts, and Darvish. And I thought it was interesting that Cease is like maybe the ace of the staff, but not starting game 1. And, maybe the best pitcher on the staff and not really being promoted by the team at all. I wondered if that was a sign of potential things to come. We can save that if you want. But you mentioned trolley, and I was like, I saw that story, and my brain's been ever since then going like, why would they leave Cease out of all of this stuff?
I love that. The evidence suggests that Dylan Cease still could be traded.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right? And the evidence that I present to you, Your Honor, is in the form of a trolley wrap. Right. Yeah. I do think sometimes there is. I always tried to pay attention to that sort of stuff because I thought it was different. Like whose banners, whose names and faces are on the billboards at Petco Park, right? Who are they promoting?
Change those though.
What's that?
I've seen them change those before. But guys up there, and actually, I think Hosmer. They had to pull down Hosmer when they traded him.
Yeah, they pulled down some dudes over the years, right? Like you can always try to read and read between the lines and try to figure out, well, who's on the promotional calendar, who gets a bobblehead, right? Like who has a floppy hat? When is this person's floppy hat, or when is this person's promotional item? Is it in the first half of the year? Is it in the second half of the year? Is it after the trade deadline? There's always that sort of stuff. I think, listen, we're 24 hours away from opening day, and Dylan Cease is on the roster.
That's true.
And I think that's the most important part of it at all. But yeah, I mean, maybe you do. I'm sure they sit around in the marketing meetings and they talk about the sort of stuff. Like, is it going to look stupid if we have Dylan Cease on the side of the green line and he's not here anymore because he's pitching for the Reds? You know what I mean? Like, I suppose that's probably something that you have to consider. But, we also know several times per baseball season it'll happen that there will be a player bobblehead and that player will have been traded someplace else. So, you just got to do the best you can.
If you're saying Dylan Cease for Ellie De La Cruz, I'm taking it right now. I'm punching go on that ticket.
Yeah, no, but for me, it's 100% going to be trolley. That's one of the great things about moving where I've moved is that, I know in a lot of other parts of the county, the trolley is considered inefficient. And, I understand it. I understand the criticisms of the system. I think it could be better, frankly, as we turn into the voice of San Diego. But from where I live, it's pretty efficient. I can find that trolley without even knowing the schedule. I can pretty much just show up there at will and get on a trolley, scan my Prano QR code. Not that I've ever been asked to prove that I've paid the fare, ever. But I still do, and I'm Scouts honor on that one.
Look at you.
But it's super simple because it takes me right on the 12th and Imperial. So, I'm a block and a half away from Petco Park.
Nice.
You're smack dab in the middle of the gas lamp. I will take it to Barrio Logan. I will walk up to Mason Ale Works. I will hang out there on opening day. Then I will go and meet some friends. I've been hooked up with a ticket. So I appreciate the great Tony Bubbles and Todd from Bubs at the Ballpark who have come through. I didn't have a ticket to the game. I was like, what am I going to do? I was just going to walk around and just soak in the energy of it all. But I was offered a ticket to the game, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to go and enjoy as a fan and root for the home team. What are you going to do?
Not to criticize people's names, but if Tony Bubbles was hooking me up with something, I would assume it would be something a little bit less legal than a ticket to Petco Park for a Padres game. Not that I know Tony, it's just the name. It just sounds like a TV drug dealer name.
No, Tony subscribed, man. I saw him on the list this morning.
Heck yeah. We love Tony then. My plans for tomorrow are ridiculous. But for parenthood reasons. I will come down to Mason Ale Works. I will drink some beer. I will eat some delicious tacos. And then when you take off for the game, I'm probably going to get in my car and drive home because I have to pick up my daughter from school, take her to the eye doctor because, of course, she has an eye doctor appointment on opening day. Fortunately, the eye doctor appointment is not until 4:30, so I'm hoping that I can watch or listen to all of this game before the eye doctor appointment. After the eye doctor appointment, it is open house at my daughter's school, which means we have to go to her classroom and see all these projects that are all over the walls that her and her classmates have done for us for this day. And then I think after that, my wife signed us up to clean up the library or something after a book fair. It's going to be a big dad day, which is which I guess goes in line with the Padres being the fathers. But I'm going to squeeze in the opening day matchup in between a whole bunch of other life stuff, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint.
Well, that's the complete opposite of my day.
Yeah.
Where I get to be pretty much 100% useless and irresponsible and selfish.
So jealous.
Because I will take the trolley to Barrio Logan. I will go to Mason Ale Works. I will indulge in a couple of cocktails. Then I probably will wander into East Village and hook up with my guys and go hang out with them, grab a bite to eat, go into the game, have a couple more cocktails, have a little more food, see where the day takes me while you're cleaning out a library or whatever it is that you're doing. I'm going to be, having a shot of Don Julio someplace, I would guess, and grabbing another bite to eat and then hopping in an Uber home. So we couldn't have two different days centered around baseball. I will say, I don't know that you and I talked about doing a proper 2025 season preview, but I do pay attention to the season previews. and I'm excited. I don't know that I'm in the minority on it. Game's going to be a sellout. Place is going to look great.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be wearing brown. We all know this is Peter Seidler's vision of
Yeah.
what it looks like on game day. So, I'm super stoked about that. And I'm not saying everybody is a negative Nelly on this stuff. I was reading a preview, though, at The Athletic. My pal Dennis Lynn. I don't know if you know Dennis or not, but Dennis, like every writer, has to do a bit of a write-up on the Padres. And he included a couple of links to other pieces. What do they call? Hyperlinks, I think, is the correct term on this.
Sure.
And, how the Padres stack up. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. So, this is sort of a bit statistically categorized. One of the categories is farm system, right? Farm system ranked 25th according to Keith Law.
Sure.
They traded away a lot of talent. So, that doesn't feel like it's completely out of place. Their bats are 7th. Their arms are 9th. Those are good things, right? 7th, 9th.
Top 10.
Power rankings, their 13th power rankings, totally useless. But then there was one category, John, I was unfamiliar with, and it was hope. There's a hope category. Somebody, Stephen Nesbitt, his annual Hope of Meter fan optimism survey. Have you seen this?
I have not. I feel like I know Mr. Nesbitt from social media a little bit, but I have not seen this.
According to whatever the calculus is in determining fan optimism, the Padres rank 16th with a 70.2% optimism. 70.2% optimism. 16th in all of Major League Baseball. For context, last year the Padres were 17th, so they've moved up a spot.
There we go.
So 17th. 2 years ago, 2023, right? That was the year where you couldn't get yourself into FanFest. They were second in Major League Baseball, 98.8%. So 2 years ago, a team that didn't go to the postseason, 98.8% fan optimism, second in all of Major League Baseball. Last year, a team that resulted in 93 wins, 56.3%. This year, somewhere in the middle of that. A little closer to the 56 than the 98, but about 70%. So that's not too bad. I mean, it goes to show you, too, social media sometimes will paint a picture that's not exactly accurate.
Yeah, and it also shows you, I was thinking about this morning, about what the identity of this team is, and I think what I landed on is they don't have one yet. And if you compare that to last year, I think at this point last year, they also had no identity. And then when they traded for Arise, and then eventually when they traded for the bullpen arms, they found an identity as we are going to be the high batting average shut down bullpen team, right? The bullpen's not quite shut down anymore. Some of those batting average guys are gone and replaced with guys that don't hit quite the same or don't hit quite as well. And it's interesting because I'm starting to think that AJ Preller goes into the season. Like, this is part of why I was yelling at people on Blue Sky yesterday. I think AJ Preller doesn't go wipes his hands on March 26th and goes, okay, team's done. Let's see how they do. I think and this is kind of how I'm going into the season too, which is let's see what this team is, and then we'll figure out how to build some strengths out of it. And that's how you form an identity. As of right now, I don't know what this team's strength is. I'm not entirely sure what its weakness is, other than the bottom of the lineup and the back of the rotation. But I don't know what its strength is at the moment. And for me, I'm going to be very interested in the first couple weeks, couple months to figure out what are they missing, or what's the thing that could be turned into a strength if they make one move and add one more piece on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just top of my head listening to you, top of the lineup, top of the rotation, and back into the bullpen, right? They're really good in those areas. I understand you have a ton of questions about maybe starting at 5, maybe starting at 6 when it comes to the lineup. Obviously, with the rotation, if you want to say Pavetta's a question mark because you're unfamiliar with him, I understand
he's fine.
it. But I think he's fine.
Yeah,
I think, questions at 4, what's going to happen there? Darvish apparently is going to throw or has been throwing. So we'll have to just wait and see. We all have heard what we've heard with regards to Darvish and elbows and I think it's natural for people's minds to go into the dark place on that. I understand. But again, we'll have to see how that works out. I don't know much about, is it Kyle Hart? I just don't know enough to tell you that I have a strong opinion one way or the other.
No one knows anything about him. He pitched in Korea last year. No one has any idea.
Could be good, could be bad. Feels like there's been more success than failure in that strategy from AJ Preller. So kind of got to see it to understand it, and kind of got to. I'll always remember when Robert Suarez made his Padres debut during the regular season and blew a save in Arizona, and the reaction was, "This guy sucks. He's terrible, and wherever AJ Preller found him, he should send him back."
Yeah,
right. Like there were lots of people who were saying that sort of stuff, and even if you're not 100% in on Robert Suarez, I think there's been a lot more good than there's been bad with Robert Suarez.
Do you remember the what the players and the coaches' reaction was after that game? Because I do.
I don't.
So Suarez comes in. I think he couldn't throw a strike when he came in the first time.
Yeah, he really struggled. It was Arizona. I know that. It was
he got crushed. He blew a save, I think, or maybe it was an eighth inning thing. And I remember, after the game, media and fans are freaking out. And I think it was AC who told the story and said Suarez, he came in after the game. He's sitting in his locker room, his head's down, and someone, I want to say it was Manny or something, walks up and just hands him an open beer. It just goes, "Here." And then the guys and the coaches would come around and go, "Hey, we all have bad days. Let's tell some funny stories about who had the worst, first appearance in Major League Baseball. This happens to all of us. Shake it off." And then he did. But you've told me countless stories about, Flannery and Nevin and guys like this, basically looking at you as a media guy or even a fan and being like, you don't get it. You don't understand that a lot of the stuff that matters to the fans and the media, baseball players are specifically programmed to ignore and move past. And that's I don't even remember how we got into Suarez, but that's the thing that I remember from that was the baseball guys going this doesn't matter. I know it feels like your whole world just collapsed. This doesn't matter. Right.
Yeah. Especially when you're early on in the season and it's just the first couple of opportunities and you're like, wow, we're relying on this guy, but it's like a baseball thing. I think a lot of baseball fans, and I understand, I don't think there's anything wrong. That's probably not the right way I want to say that. I think it's a good thing that people are engaged from day one. Yeah. I'm not ready to make permanent conclusions based on something that happened in Peoria, Arizona. I'm not ready to make a permanent conclusion. And for an example, let's go back to a year ago, John, right before the start of the season. Were people super excited that Jurickson Profar was the starting left fielder for the team? No. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. And Jurickson Profar had a lot of fans in San Diego. And even those amongst us who are the presidents of the fan clubs for Jurickson Profar, who would like to go into business one day with Jurickson Profar on Bar Profar on the island of Curacao, are like, yeah, it's cool. Vibes. Backup player. But they're probably going to get somebody better, right? Jackson Merrill was I was doing the radio show, so I remember this. You remember this as well.
I was freaked out. Listening. I was freaked out.
It was debatable whether or not he should be starting in the big leagues. It was a debatable and a valid debate at that. For anybody that wanted to show the receipts because Jackson Merrill made it to it was a valid conversation. There were smart people who have been around baseball for a long time who were like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Especially at a new position. I don't know about this. 40 whatever games in AA, that's a pretty big jump. Worked out. So I don't know that everybody was super excited to say, yeah, wow, what an outfield with Profar and Jackson. So, I think the one thing that I've learned in sports is you don't know. Yeah, everybody wants to have an answer and wants to have this indelible take, but the fact of the matter is you don't know. And that's the whole purpose of watching the games is that you don't know. And I do appreciate that people are engaged and people feel like it should be better. But you talked about identity. And I do think that to start this season, even though you can argue that it's a clean slate all you want.
Yeah.
And each season should, in theory, philosophically represent a clean slate. I do think, and I do have a question about whether or not there's going to be anything that lingers from how 2024 ended. And I think it was a bit of psychology from Dodger players, manager Dave Roberts, to point out over and over and over again that they felt like the Padres were the better team. Because, I think that failure, like, will the failure of last postseason fuel this team, or will it be interpreted as a missed opportunity? And I think what the Dodgers are doing is psychological, because what they're saying is, you guys had us. Like I can't believe you guys blew it.
Yeah.
Like, you guys had us. We were dead to rights. We didn't have starting pitching. Our manager was going to get fired. In a sliding doors world, Dave Roberts was going to get fired.
100%.
Like, that was not a big secret around baseball, that if he didn't get through that series, the Dodgers were prepared to make a change. Now, he just signed an extension. So think about how much life changed for him, right? And players went to great lengths to point out, yeah, we thought the Padres are better. We thought the Padres are great. We thought, that was the team. That was the only team that was going to. And it does have an effect. It doesn't get interpreted for me as a compliment. Instead, it gets interpreted as a missed opportunity. And deep down, psychologically, like, how that impacts the players, how that impacts the Padre players specifically, to me, is an interesting part of the story of 2025.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, I just remember going into that series and thinking, how do you beat this Padres team when their bullpen is this good? And the Dodgers literally freaked out their offense so much that it's like, well, your bullpen is useless because you can't score a run. And when you're talking about, like, carryover effect, I wonder if there's going to be a mental thing when they get into bullpens. Like, this was a thing in 2023, was it? Where they would go up against other teams' bullpens and just, like, kind of lose the game in the last few innings because their bullpen was kind of falling apart and they couldn't score against opposing bullpens. And I just wonder if relief pitching is going to be a thing that sticks in their head. I have circled two names that I am watching very, very closely for the Padres right now. One of which is Xander Bogaerts, because Xander Bogaerts went from a guy whose OPS plus was in the 130s and 120s to a guy whose OPS plus was 92 last year. 92 means he was a below average hitter by a pretty wide margin. And the year before it was 117. And how many games did he play? Well, he played 155 games in 2023, but 111 last year. And if his OPS plus is, like, below, I don't know, 120 again this year, maybe 115 if I'm being generous, like, that becomes one of the worst contracts ever signed. And I don't know if you have a take on this. I don't even really have a take on it. It's just something that I'm watching. And I'm like, is he done? Is he cooked? Because if so, that is going to affect the future of the San Diego Padres in a really big way. And it feels like one of those things you're going to know pretty quickly. It feels like a couple months into the season, we're going to have an idea of, is this guy just going to be an anchor on the team for the next several years and the thing that sinks AJ Preller, who we'll get into in a second? Or is he bouncing back and, he was kind of injured and he had to find his way and he's switching leagues and all of that. I don't know which one it is, but he's a guy that I have circled. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you paid him all that money, right? And the second they paid him, I think the analysis was probably accurate that it was an overpay.
Yeah.
And it immediately got put into the category of one of the worst contracts in all of baseball. He was hurt. He was asked to switch positions.
Yep. Now
he's going back. But for how long? Because even though you don't have a ton on the farm, you sort of suspect he's going to get replaced.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. It's not personal, but it's a bad signing, And
yeah.
I don't know what level of expectation there is for Xander Bogaerts. I think it's sort of a dangerous mindset, though, to think that the success of the team hinges on Xander Bogaerts.
I don't think the success of the team. I literally am. He's more my, like, long term, like, if he's actually this bad, it changes the calculus for the next 5-6 years. Mm-hmm. The other guy I have circled is much more short term, which is Jason Hayward, because we thought this was going to be a Jason Hayward, Connor Joe platoon in left. And I was looking at the splits going like, Hayward hits righty pitching better than lefty pitching. Cool. Joe hits lefty pitching better than he hits righty pitching. This feels like this makes sense. And now we're starting the season and Connor Joe is going to be in El Paso, San Diego's own, gets to go visit El Paso. And, I was looking at, let's stick with OPS Plus for a second. I was looking at Jason Hayward's, career, and he's a guy who like every 3 or 4 years has like a really good year. And outside of that really seems to struggle with his hitting. In the last decade, he has had 3 seasons with an OPS Plus above 100. 3. And 100 is usually meant to be like average, right? Jurickson Profar over the last 10 years has had 4 such seasons. So you could pretty easily make the case that Jason Hayward, today's Jason Hayward, should have lower expectations offensively than what we had for Jurickson Profar before last season. Or I guess similar to last season. I don't know. I don't think the Profar thing's going to happen again. Prove me wrong, Jason Hayward. But he's a guy that I'm just like, it seems like if they get one of these seasons, like, okay, 2021, his OPS Plus was 69. 2022, his OPS Plus was 56. Like, that's an unplayable level of player. If they get that guy, I don't know what they do. Outside of, like, eventually just going, like, I guess Tirso or Nellis gives us another crack at someone who can be, average or better. But yeah, I'm very concerned about, like, I'm not even really concerned about the catcher position. I'm really concerned about what happens if Jason Hayward is not the good version of Jason Hayward.
Well, then you got to pull the plug, right? I mean, you got to do what you did. It's not you cannot pull the plug on Xander Bogaerts. That's the problem.
But
you can pull the plug on the other pieces that you're.
But if you pull the plug on Hayward, what's the backup plan? Ornelas?
Like you said, yeah. I mean, I guess that's why you run it the way you run it. For anybody that's like, well, I think you should start with Ornelas in the big leagues, but then you never find out anything about Hayward, and it might go exactly according to every prediction out there, but the predictions don't always match the reality. So you might as well run it this way, and if you sort of sense that it's not, it's, hey, like, we're just not going to catch that lightning in a bottle like we have in the past. At least we have something. Or, hey, we got a madman at the wheel here in AJ Preller, and, he might be able to figure something out. I mean, that's the one thing I do think, I do think Preller's put himself in that category, that position where, he does have things that are concepts that are constantly being considered that it's just impossible for you and I even to know about. Yeah. Like, all we know about is what we see, but what we don't know about is whatever else that he's been discussing or setting up that, will take everybody by surprise, that no insider at all had any insight on.
And that's why that's a big reason why I'm not worried about catcher, because I think he's got a plan for that, and that's
See, I mean, and that's my point too. Is like, I'm not really worried about these like specific things. I'm worried about more, just like the how these guys have come back. Like, do the Padre players believe all these things that the Dodger players have been saying? Like how does that affect you? Like, how does that impact you? The story of John, something new listeners could count on here is a good philosophical reference. Like the whole the moral of the story of Sisyphus comes to mind. You know who Sisyphus is, obviously.
He pushed up the rock for eternity.
Right, like this Sisyphean, I guess, the Sisyphean approach to a baseball season, because no matter what happens, right, whether it's payroll, whether it's the money that the Dodgers spent, the Dodgers not only get through the Padres, but then they take away Roki Sasaki, right?
Yeah.
And then they land a fan favorite in Blake Snell. So you're constantly feeling like, well, even if the Padres have a good season, how are they going to get through the Dodgers? And you can make a case today based on hypotheticals about players who will or won't be available. But will that sort of, the impossible task of pushing this boulder up the hill only to have it slide back down over and over and over again on you. You know, does that become pervasive in a way that resonates not only through a fan base, but potentially through a clubhouse as well? Now, also, let's remember one thing. The moral of the story of Sisyphus is, even though, you know, this sort of thing continues to happen over and over and over again, you should still figure out a way to find some joy in your life, you know, as a fan. So, like, let's remember that. Like, that's the actual moral of the story. The moral of the story isn't that you can never get the boulder to the top of the hill, is that there is a lot of enjoyment in life and in baseball along the way and on the journey, as a journey guy, not so much a destination guy. But, you know, I do understand that. Like it's like, wow, you know, why are we doing all this? Like, you know, what are we going through all this for? Like, we can never get through. We can just never get through. It's you know, the San Diego Sisyphean Padres. So, you know, I hope that's not a mindset that's lingering around a bit with this club. I just hope that that's not it, because I do think that there are personalities in there that might be susceptible to that kind of thinking. But I would like to think most people are more wired along the lines of young Jackson Merrill, who is ready to go out there and conquer the world. And it doesn't matter who has been signed by whom. He and his dogs are just going to go run out there and are going to run through the opposition, because he would rather be no place else than with his dogs in the dugout at Petco Park.
Jackson Merrill's such a baseball guy. Like he's
such a baseball guy.
There's not a person in baseball that does not love that man and everything he says and everything he does. Quick point, which is that I think left field feels like it's just been this unsolvable thing for the Padres, like basically since they got to Petco Park, right? And I think the closest they came to solving it was 2023 when they had Juan Soto out there, although I guess Juan Soto played some DH.
Well, he played a lot of right. Yeah, he was all over the place.
I mean, that was he wasn't
when
playing
he got
right.
Traded, he
Tatis
played right. You're right. The next season, he played left.
Yeah, and it like I can tell you, you know, they've had speedy guys. Hey, we're gonna put Jankowski out there. Hey, we're gonna put Profar out there. You know, there was the years where Matt Kemp was out there. I think Hunter Renfroe had some years out there. And I'm always like thinking about when Chase Headley was like the third baseman for this team. I think this was either before or after the year where he hit a bunch of home runs. And there was this conversation about roster construction. And I don't remember who did it, but it was someone from the front office. And they were like, look, the spots that you typically try and get power into your lineup from are first base, third base, left field, right field, the corners. And I'm looking at this team and I'm like, well, first base, you got no power. Left field, you got no power. So I granted you're getting some from center field and you know, maybe you get a little bit from Cronenworth at second base. That used to be his value. He kind of hit for more power than a typical second baseman. Maybe you get some from Bogarts if he turns around. Maybe they find a catcher who can hit. And that's all good, but like it seems like it should be one of the easiest spots for them to fit, which is like get a guy who's good enough defensively who just scares the hell out of opposing pitchers and put him in left field or DH. And like neither one of them have been a spot that AJ Preller has really been able to fill for more than like a season here or there. And I don't know if that's by design because he's like they're so easy to find and replace. They're like running backs in the NFL. Or if he is just really struggling to find someone who can play adequate left field defense and be an offensive threat and be inexpensive enough to fit in with the rest of these guys that you're paying a ton of money to. But it's one of the most interesting positions. And like, God, I can think so many times over the years, Jed Jerko played left field. Chase Headley played left field. Phil Nevin played left field.
I've seen Mark Sweeney play left field.
Mark Sweeney played left field.
My buddy played left field out there one day. I was like, what are you doing in left field?
I saw Miguel Ojeda played like right field at some point. But it's like it should be the easiest spot for them to fill year over year. And it just seems like every year it's a bit of like, well, we're going to piece it together and make it work with whatever we have left. And that's another reason why Hayward kind of scares the crap out of me. Do you want to talk about this John Seidler letter? Because I think it ties into what we're talking about here.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people saw this. I don't know where exactly this appeared. Yeah, I will say this came across a timeline on social media. So forgive me for not knowing exactly where it was that this appeared. Was this a letter to season ticket members? I'm going to guess it probably was something that was emailed out to people. John Seidler, who's the chairman of the Padres, voted in unanimously by baseball ownership not too long ago. Said, I'm going to read the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty short. You can go through it.
Yeah, okay. John Seidler from a couple days ago. I'm excited to join you at Petco Park for the beginning of the 2025 Padres season this Thursday against the Atlanta Braves. The entire Padre organization is grateful for your loyal and passionate support as we look to build off the momentum of our 2024 season and win a World Series championship for San Diego and you, our faithful fans. When I joined my brother Peter and the ownership group in 2012, our goal was to build a consistently winning team that would earn the love and support of our fans while delivering San Diego's first World Championship. That goal remains the same. We have a talented Major League team that is ready to compete and is fueled by you. We also have the best fans and ballpark in Major League Baseball, and your energy and support make all the difference. I have witnessed the electric environment and that your passion creates. Our players feel it too, and we need you to, quote, bring it, in quotes, inverted commas, starting this Thursday. Thank you for your faithful support. I look forward to joining you at Petco Park and on the road for what promises to be a special 2025 season. With gratitude, John Seidler, Chairman.
All right, you want me to go with my thoughts first?
My first thought is I think he actually wrote that.
Oh, I wrote down, I can't tell if it was written by a marketing person or artificial intelligence.
Oh no. I'm going to guess that is not written by, that was not workshopped by a bunch of marketing people.
Because it's so boring?
Well, listen, I understand that we have normalized capitalizations and air quotes and things along those lines and inverted commas or whatever you want to say. I know we've normalized that in a lot of high-ranking official places, but I think that this sounds like somebody who just banged it out on a keyboard with his thumbs.
I wrote, not capitalized, but I wrote on my notes on this, one of my favorite words ever, which is milquetoast. Felt very milquetoast. But I went back and I reread it like a couple hours after I read it the first time. And I said, I was thinking in terms of like if Peter was writing this letter, right? Peter's still alive and he's writing a letter to start the season just to thank the fans, encourage them and everything. Peter always made a point to mention like Preller, the manager, and to show like, I trust these guys. I work with these guys. I talk with these guys. I trust these guys. This letter from John Seidler is basically like, hey fans, we're still trying to win. I'll see you out there. Make sure you're loud. And there was no mention of Preller. There was no mention. There was no mention of Mike Schilt. There was no mention of any players specifically. It just said, we have players. We like them. Our goal is to win. Please bring it. And it just, I don't know, like anytime you see a change at the top of an organization, I start wondering, as we talked about in the beginning, I wonder how the situation is changing as a result of it. And I wonder, if Preller and Schilt are feeling comfortable in their roles with the Padres right now. I wonder if they feel strong in their relationship with John Seidler and how that might compare with their relationship to Peter before he passed. I found that part to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this. My hunch is that if you're asking how comfortable Mike Schilt and AJ Preller feel, I would guess that one probably feels a little more comfortable than the other, and that would be the manager, not the general manager. The manager got a contract extension. Although for the life of me, I don't really know what the rush was to do that. If you were to go back in time and say, should you give Bob Melvin an extension after that first season, every single Padre fan would have been like, yeah, of course. Kidding me? NLCS. What are we talking about here? Even Jace Tingler back that first year, he was a candidate for manager of the year. Now it's COVID, so who knows?
Yeah.
But, if you would have said, well, what is this guy's popularity after one season? You'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I guess, Tingler's got something going on there. But anyway, they did it, and he's a perfectly adequate major league manager. I think Mike Schilt is. I don't think he does anything that would prevent you from winning. So
that's a good description. Perfectly adequate. That's a good description.
I do. I don't think there's anything great about him. I just think he's a perfectly adequate manager who will, you can win with.
Yeah, he's not going to lose you games, which
right.
I appreciate.
You're right. Yeah. So, I think his status is probably a little bit more secure. You continue to hear, is there conflict between the baseball operations department and the business department? And, what would that mean looking long term internally? Is John Seidler, is he somebody who's going to, to keep a proper balance between the heads of the baseball department and the business department, right? Represented by Eric Grupner and AJ Preller here. Because I think Peter did a really good job with that. And once Peter passed, it was sort of up to how's this going to work now? Because, we don't know that, this balance is, who's going to keep this balance? Well, it wasn't going to be Eric Katsenda. Is John Seiler going to be that guy? Or is John Seiler going to, choose to say, well, I'll reside more with the business people. I'm going to hang off on the business side. Peter immersed himself in the baseball side in addition to the business side. And at least on surface analysis, it seems like John's immersed himself more on the business side. So maybe that suggests something. Maybe it suggests nothing, right? It's not like anybody's talking. It's not like anybody has access to John Seidler other than Kevin Acee in a controlled environment somewhere in Peoria, Arizona. So, he's not available. And I will say one of the traditions that we always have with Peter Seidler that I will miss is opening day. Peter always used to join us on set, wherever we were, in East Village or in the Gaslamp. And Peter passed, obviously, 2 off seasons ago. His brother Tom sat down with us last year, and it was great. So, just one thing that popped into my mind is this will be the first year for me where I haven't interviewed somebody named Seidler on opening day in, probably 10 years.
Oh, John's welcome to come down to Mason Ale Works. We'll be there. I'll bring my
recording equipment. And it ain't going to be John. But, yeah, I actually read that. It's funny that you said what you said because I read it and I was like, yeah, this sounds like something that was probably written by this. If this came from some highly, educated marketing person, I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in that marketing degree. I would not. Now, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying that it felt like something that somebody who looks like John Seidler would write.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to toss out one last thing, and then I'll let you take us wherever you want for the rest of the show, which is Manny Machado. I think there was a point before Tatis got hurt and Tatis got suspended, around the time that Tatis and Machado were fighting in a St. Louis dugout, where there was some question as to like who's the face of this team, right? Like Machado was kind of the clubhouse leader along with Hosmer, but there was some question of like who's the face of the team, who's the future of the team. And not to get into the contract stuff, but Manny's going to be here for a while. And if you look at Manny in his 20s, he's putting up 6 WAR, 7 WAR seasons. In 2021, 5 WAR, going B WAR right now. 2022, 6.8 WAR.
Is that your preference, by the way, B WAR or F WAR?
No, mine's Fangraphs, but I just happen to have his baseball reference.
I'm B WAR.
Okay.
We'll have to come to common ground on that.
Yeah, but going off B WAR, 2022, 6.8. 2021, 5.0. Number of seasons in Baltimore, 7.77. The season where he played half in Baltimore, half Dodgers, 6.2. Last year, 3.1. Year before that, 2.7. I think Manny is declining.
He's been injured.
He played 152 games last year.
I know, but the way the myth is, the myth, and I do think there's a little bit of reality to it.
Plays through everything.
2 years ago, he ended up having to have surgery.
I remember
he did have surgery, right?
I remember that.
We can't deny that. And, after the fact, even if you don't want to hear it, it was reported that he had been dealing with this for a really long time. I do remember at the end of 2023, there were people who were openly saying, Manny should just shut it down and have the surgery. And I would never hold that against the player. I did not think that the season was so far gone that it was an obvious choice, that he was being selfish.
Agreed.
And I thought that there was something going on where his owner was fighting for his life. And until you were actually mathematically eliminated, and people rewrite the history of the 2023 Padres in a very odd way. They were much closer to making the postseason than people make it out to be.
They played real games in September that mattered.
John, they were one win from going to the postseason. If they had beaten the Arizona Diamondbacks one more time, they had a tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks and the Cubs. They were going to the postseason.
Yeah.
Now, what they would have done that postseason without Darvish and Musgrove, So anyway, let's not live in the past. But I didn't fault him for that. And I don't know how much it set him back, but he couldn't play third base for the first month and a half of the season last year. So
that's true.
I do think it was his elbow. I'm sorry. It was his elbow, not his shoulder. But, I do think that there is, a little bit that, and I've, maybe Manny's not been my favorite player, but I do think that there's a little bit of leeway that I would give him on that over the last couple of years. I think we can sum up a lot of this, whether it's Xander, whether it's left field, whether it's Manny. I think we can sum it up by just simply stating your stars have got to play like stars. Your stars have absolutely got to play like stars. You can try to cut a corner in left field because you have two all-stars in that outfield. You can try to get by with no power at first base because you do have some other stars that are playing on this team, but they got to play like stars. Otherwise, you're shot, man. You got no freaking chance.
Yeah, and my point here was not to just like shit on Manny and be like Manny's getting worse. It's more, let's imagine a scenario where Jackson Merrill has another 6 WAR season, and Fernando Tatis Jr. has a bounce back season. He's 6 or 7 WAR, and Manny puts up another 2.5, 3 WAR season. I don't think by the end of that season we're going to think Manny is the face of this franchise.
Right.
Manny is the leader of this team. Like, I think at some point soon, there might come a time where Manny kind of loses that mantle of leader of the team, face of the franchise. And that's just, it's a thing to keep your eye on. Look, I would love nothing more. I've never really had to deal with Manny from a media perspective. So I love watching him as a fan of the Padres. I think he's a great player. I'm very happy that he signed with the Padres. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on if he can bounce back. If he can, I think that's a huge boon for the Padres and a great sign for his future. If he can't, I think things are going to look really different next year, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what you can do with him. I mean, unfortunately, you just have some of these anchor contracts that are kind of immovable. I do think Manny, and I think there was a stretch last year too, right, where Tatis gets hurt and there's no Xander Bogaerts. I do think there is a little bit of, I don't know that God complex is the right word, but I do think that Manny, Manny thrives in an environment where it's like, man, I got to put this all on my shoulders.
He loves it. He loves it. Get on my back. He loves it.
And I'm not the only one. I know there are people internally who think that. Like, they'd rather have Tatis healthy and Xander kind of contribute in some capacity. But I do think it's been an observation that's been made and accepted as a valid theory internally that Manny sometimes is like, I guess I'll put it on my back again. Like, he just kind of does have that. He does have a little bit of that vibe as well. What I actually hope too, again, and I know it's narrative more than it is, data driven. Let's not kid ourselves. There was a little, it felt like there was a little tension going on there with Manny and like his SDFC role and bringing the team out. Like, I hope they haven't, started some sort of internal civil war here when it comes to, him and the club and all that sort of stuff. I hope that there's nothing that, like, let's just leave that where it was and everybody focus on. By the way, speaking of, Saturday's going to be a fucking banging day in San Diego. It's 4 o'clock, Petco Park.
Yeah.
Padres and Braves. 7:30, SDFC, LAFC, Snapdragon Stadium. I'm sure some people that are listening to this are probably going to do both and take that trolley and use that Pronto card that we were talking about earlier. That's going to be a freaking banging day in San Diego.
Nothing would be funnier than the team starting a civil war with a guy who signed for like the next 15 years.
Right.
With a contract, with like an untradeable contract. Nothing would be funnier. Manny Machado probably going to make an appearance at that SDFC game, I would imagine, right? Like,
I would think so.
Game ends, he hops in a limo, he goes over, even if he's showing up at halftime, I imagine he would show up and pat the guys on the back and be like, hey, good job. I mean, I don't want to start things that haven't started yet, but SDFC versus LAFC feels like a big deal. Like, that feels, I know there's an LA Galaxy team, and I don't want to push them in the category of the Angels because they're way more successful than the Angels. But it feels like if there's a rivalry to be had, it's probably going for San Diego FC right now. It's probably going to be with LAFC. So yeah, like, big deal game. I hope a bunch of the fans are trying to do both. Are you trying to do both, Darren?
I'm not going to be doing both. I'll be doing SDFC.
Oh, all right,
for sure. Enough. Yeah, I mean, it's odd because I thought about a rivalry too with LAFC, and one of the things that I've seen is there's almost like a my enemy's enemy is my friend kind of relationship developing between SDFC and LAFC.
Okay.
Right? Because Tom Penn was the CEO there. He's the CEO here. Some of the supporters, there's been some people. So I almost get the sense it's like we will have a healthy rivalry, but let's be honest. Like the Galaxy sucks, right? like we could agree on when we're on the field for 90 minutes, we're going to be giving it our all. We want to be duking it out and battling it out for who's going to be the better team in the standings in the Western Conference and all that sort of stuff. But we will agree, we'll be passionate and we'll be rivals on the field, but we will be in agreement. Like Galaxy's lame and Carson blows. They're expecting remember what it looked like when all the SDFC fans went up to Carson to start the season? Remember, It was like 8. I think the official allotment was 825 for away fans, for SDFC fans. And, who knows? Probably a couple more hundred people showed up there as well. So maybe we're talking about 1,000. I've heard the numbers at Snapdragon Stadium. This will be the first real, true away supporter section that's going to come in the Snapdragon Stadium. I'm just going to let everybody know now, if you haven't been part of an away section, and I know we see Dodgers at Petco. We're talking soccer here.
Yeah.
If you haven't been a part of that, I'm just giving you a heads up now. I think the number that I heard, John, was over 1,000 for LAFC, which I guess is on level with SDFC fans in Carson. We'll see what it looks like at LAFC when SDFC travels up there.
Yeah.
But I've been told that the request was at least 1,000 and probably a little bit more. So you're going to have to bring it if you're going to the game on Saturday night at Snapdragon Stadium and you don't want to be drowned out by one of the loudest supporter sections away or home in Major League Soccer. You're going to have to bring it on Saturday night.
And
bring it, as John Seidler would say, in quotes.
In quotes, bring it. All right.
Can I promote real quick? Speaking of SDFC,
please do.
Yeah,
please do.
If you're listening to this on Wednesday, there is a live on tape SDFC midweek show on 760 and the iHeartRadio app at 6:00. Myself, Adrian Garcia Marquez, Mikey Varas gives us an update on Chucky Lozano and what the plan is for Chucky Lozano this Saturday night. That's as far as I'm going to go. But I interviewed him on Tuesday, and he gave us a very specific update on what the plan is for Chucky Lozano for this week and potentially for Saturday night. So you're going to want to pay attention to that and keep your fingers crossed. We also talked to the captain, Jeppe Tverskov, and we did a little Nations League recap with the return of Mexico and the embarrassing performance from the U.S. men's national team, Fox Deportes, Apple TV Plus, Mariano Trujillo. So myself and Adrian will have the show coming up 6:00 AM 760 in the iHeartRadio app. If you miss it, it'll be available on demand via podcast, just like this.
I will be listening, probably via the iHeartRadio app. Speaking of, by the way, the subscriptions keep rolling in while we're recording.
I know. I've seen a couple dozen even since we've started here.
I did see right in the beginning someone emailed me, obviously a big Darren Smith fan, who said that I listen to all my podcasts on either Spotify or the iHeartRadio app. How do I get this podcast in there? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Spotify, I think, is a no. I fought with them all day yesterday. That's a no. But maybe I can get it in the iHeartRadio app. We'll see. My question for you.
Spotify's a no, huh?
They don't do private podcasts. There's just no way. It's just public or not. So the public one will be there, but you'll just get partial episodes, except for when we do full episodes. I don't know. Well, again, we're adjusting as we go forward. Maybe we'll figure something out that.
What about YouTube?
Spotify.
Somebody asked me about YouTube podcasts. I don't know anything about it.
We were, Bandwagon Beach podcast we're sending to YouTube, but I got a notification the other day that the RSS feed's broken, so I'm going to go in and try and fix that and see if it'll just start updating with Section 1904 episodes, so we'll see. But on the category of the show tonight, that's not the only striker who was injured that I have questions about. Is the other one, is Marcus going to be healthy enough to play this weekend? Do you know? Did you get an update?
No, he's not going to be this week. No, he was definitely going to be... there was a report out there, I think, that said 10 to 12 weeks. They didn't confirm that, but they didn't publicly deny it.
Is it a sprain?
With them, it's kind of hard. It was it was a lower body injury. You know,
they do the hockey stuff.
They do a little bit of that, but it was made clear last week that it was going to be a while for Marcus.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, I mean the transfer window's open until April 23rd, so I still think you're going to have to bring in some players here. One way or the other, whether these players got hurt or not. But good news, John, is both players are returning from international duty. Anibal Godoy and Patty McNair.
That's where Godoy was. I was wondering where he was last week.
Dude, he's the captain of the Panamanian team that played for a final in the Nations League. Patty McNair is a captain of the Northern Ireland team.
Yeah.
Think about like how the leadership stacks up on this team. It's something actually we talked about with Yepe. But you're the captain of captains on this team, right?
Yeah.
These are captains of their national teams, and you got named the captain of SDFC. It's like, wow, that's pretty impressive.
That's awesome.
So, you're getting those two guys back. I don't think they'll be able to go 90, but we'll see. I don't know. They played for their national teams. They both played well. And, again, fingers crossed, seeing some players return from injury. So, it's just going to be, like I said, Saturday's going to be, what a day. There are going to be some drunk-ass people on Saturday, boy. There are going to be a lot. Take the trolley, take Uber. Make sure you're not driving out there.
So contrary to my plans tomorrow for opening day, I just looked at my calendar because I'm also I'm a calendar boy. Nothing on the calendar for Saturday. I think actually my daughter's one soccer team, their season ended last week. I think the next one doesn't start until next week. I got nothing to do on Saturday. So I am either going to be attending one or both these games, or I'm going to be attending from my couch for both of these games where the beer is cheaper and there's less need to ride a trolley or get on a train or do any of that. We'll see. But either way, it's going to be a very fun day for me on Saturday. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, I love it. All right, again, thank you all so much. Like I said, I mean, when you do this sort of, when you're taking this kind of leap into unfamiliar territory, you really have no idea, how it's going to be received at first and over a longer timeline. But just to see, as we sort of whispered into the wind that we were doing this, to see that people had responded in the way that they have was, I am filled with gratitude early on. Because, as I said, I'm well aware of how people, after decades of doing a thing, sometimes that final chapter, it's like, that poor guy. And I was pretty sensitive to not wanting to be that. And I don't feel like it's that. And I feel like it's a real high ceiling, great opportunity for us. So thank you to everybody who early on has said, hey, we would want to be interested in supporting it. It's now up to us to keep your support and to earn your support moving forward. So, we appreciate the initial interest and we will do everything we can to maintain that as well. It's, it's one thing to get it early on. Hey, I'll give it a look. It's another thing to keep it. And that's a responsibility and an obligation that I will take seriously. And I know I speak for John in that as well. So we'll see you at Mason Ale Works on Thursday pregame. And then we'll be back on Friday to recap how chaotic and different and divergent our Fridays were in and around downtown San Diego for opening day of 2025. So thank you all very much for doing this, and we'll do it again soon.